Welcome, and so glad you could join us. We'll start, of course, with our bracha to acknowledge that the reason why we're capable of even doing this on every kind of level, whether it's that we're here as human beings, that we're surviving as human beings, but the fact that we even have a Torah and that we can depend on the great minds that God allowed to share with us throughout history in all the ways they did that, printing, making books, writing, all these things. All right, acknowledging God for this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So I'm going to start off, of course, with a screen share, and I'm going to see if I think this is what I want. I hope it is. If not, I will redo it. This may not be the one I need, and if it isn't, I'll find it. This may not be the one I need. No, it is not. So I'll have to do a little searching. I'm so sorry. Give me a moment here. Okay, let's stop the share, and let me do this instead. Find what I'm looking for. Let's see here. 1 second. I'm so sorry. I thought I had it ready. Give me a moment. Sorry. I may have to do it this way. Okay, here we are. Let's try this. All right. I'm going to try it again now. This is what I want, I believe. All right. So you may remember that I talked about the curtains that were made out of goat's hair. And that's in fact what we're going to talk about. We notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And then 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th one right here. And then they had the loops. There were 2 sets of them. Here are brass loops. There were brass buckles, excuse me, and the loops, etc., etc. Now let me go back. And this is how that inner curtain hung over the tabernacle. And you notice, by the way, that it didn't reach the bottom. Okay, so I believe this was a cubit. These are the sockets here, the silver sockets. And then you can see the gold of the inlay of the tabernacle, another cubit, so that it hung over the side of the tabernacle and left, because it was 28 cubits. And this from here to here is 10 cubits. And the boards themselves, I believe, were a thickness of a cubit or a half, maybe a half cubit. So that would make 11 from here to here. So I'm thinking, but that means that if this was 28 cubits, right, this would take up 11 cubits here. And if it was 28, it would leave a difference of 17, correct? So that would have to hang over the side equally. This would then be a half a cubit here, a half cubit here. So just to show you, yes, here's a beautiful detail of the loops and how the buckles work. That's why I love to call this the zipper, right? The original idea of a zipper. And here we have here's a better rendition of the inner curtains that we have talked about. By the way, we will get to this. This is sort of out of order, but here you can see how you had the goat's hair that hung over the inner section. And then we haven't talked about this. These are the tanned ram skins, and this is the tachas here. This is one opinion of how that curtain hung. Here's just another picture of the tabernacle. The boards, we'll get to those. I'm just so glad I made all these pictures, okay? More details about it. So let's see about I'll get back to this in a moment. These are all from that book by Moshe Cohen. And why I love that book so much, because the illustrations are fantastic, in my opinion. Here we go. Here's the goat here. And look how it hung a little extra on this side here. This, of course, would have been the partition between the holy section and the Holy of Holies. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, that's the other one that we looked at. We had that picture before. And, this is another opinion of that particular. So not everyone agrees that it hung over the side like the other two cloths. There's that opinion. There's also another one. Look at that. Like that. Another opinion of what the tachas might have been. A cheetah? Oh, very nice. What you can see here is how the extra curtain, right? So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and how the extra curtain hung over the back here. Do you see that? How it folded over the back. And the Torah actually states that. These were 30 cubits long, and so you can see how it covered up, right? And left a half cubit of the silver sockets then showing over there. The next is a bird's eye view of the dimensions of the tabernacle. Here it is, right? So these were 10 cubits. The boards were 10 cubits high, which means they were approximately 15 feet tall. Let's see here. Here's a color picture of that. This is, of course, the urn which they washed their hands, and this is the base, right? This is the ramp that went up to the altar, etc. Yes, really beautifully done. Okay, very good. Let's get into the text at this point and see what I can do. So I think it's so helpful, right? It's so helpful seeing the illustrations that were made on the basis of this. So here we are. So we were in the midst of talking about the goat here. Okay, let's see if I got this right. A second, I need to close this. Okay, all right. VaYak'hel et chamesh hayeriot levad, and he connected, right? He connected the 5 curtains by themselves, the et shesh hayeriot levad, and the 6 curtains by themselves, just as we illustrated on the goat's hair curtains. Vayas lulaot chamishim al svat hayeriah hakitzona b'machberet. So he made loops, 50 loops on the edge of the curtain, the outer curtain of the set. V'chamishim lulaot asa al svat hayeriah, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain, hachoveret hashenit, that was a set in a set, the second set. Okay. Vayas karsei nechoshet chamishim, and he made 50, this is brass, nechoshet brass, chamishim 50, karsei buckles. Made 50 brass buckles, lechaber, to join et ha'ohel, the tent, liyot echad, so that it became one piece. Vayas michse la'ohel, so he made a covering for the tent. And of course, this word michse, we don't have any Rashi here, I don't believe. So not for a while. So he made, and that's partially because a lot of this is a duplication of what we read in Parshat Truma. So I'm going to go into, we're going to be patient, and God willing, if we're still doing this next year, God should give us the strength to do it. Hopefully we'll start getting into those areas where there's a tremendous amount of Rashi in trying to describe verbally what pictures can illustrate. Vayas michsela ohel. So as I said, it just simply says a covering from the tent. And that's why, of course, we have those various opinions as to how big this was and how it really functioned. Orot elim ma'odamim. So the skins of rams tanned red. Adom is red, right? Ayil is a ram, and or is a skin, right? Okay. Umichse orot tachashim, and the a covering of orot tachashim milmala above it. So it certainly sounds like there were actually 4 layers to this. And I see a misprint here, and I'm going to try and get it. Okay. All right. Going on. So that takes care of the coverings of the Mishkan. Vayas et hakrashim la Mishkan. He made the boards of the tabernacle. Atzei shitim umdim. Acacia wood of acacia, upright. They were to stand upright. Eser amot orech hakeresh, 10 cubits was the length of the board. So in other words, it stood up approximately 15 feet high. Va'ama v'chatzi ha'ama, and a cubit and a half cubit, rochav hakeresh, the width of the board, ha'echad, of a single board. So it doesn't tell you the width of the board. So I'm saying here it's 1, but I'm wondering if in fact it's actually I think it may well be 1 cubit. 1 cubit. The breadth. So in other words, it's 15 by 1.5 by 1. Let me go into the illustrations now. See what I can do here. Get into this. All right, so let's get back. I believe the boards were in this direction. Let's see. And that's, by the way, because in Parshat Truma, the order is different. Here, the boards, of course, right? Overlaid with gold. And by the way, the engineering involved in this is really amazing. So let me see what I can do. Here we go. So we got some other pictures. We start off with the individual boards. Let me find the, yep. Gonna keep going. This is the first illustration I have, and I don't know if okay, good. Let's see, maybe not. Okay, this was the first illustration of them all set up, right? And then here we go. So just another illustration maybe shows you the height of these things. Although I think these are small. If these, if an average height is, let's say, 5 to 6 feet, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, that means there's 9 feet higher in terms of ceiling. Here are the boards. Now we can see them. These are the individual boards. This is 1.5, right? And this is 15, and this is 1. I believe. It looks right, proportionately. And I'll tell you why. It has to do with these sockets. So you have 2 sockets. And let's see, here, you can see beautifully. Remember, I told you, I believe these are called tenons, right? And then you have these that can slide up and down. And the brilliancy of that is that I figured is that the tabernacle could accommodate the terrain on which it had to sit. Remember, it wasn't on prepared ground necessarily. It was in the middle of the desert, and you wanted this thing to be able to stand. Okay, so they've made these tenons. I think there might even be, here we go, let's see. Okay, so they had these little posts that stuck out and would go into the side of the one. Okay, right there. So this would fit in there, and all kinds of levels. Right, let's see what I've got here. Okay, he's just going on. So the point is this. This is 1.5. If we talk about 2 tenons, we've got to take 1.5 to break it up into 2, which means we've got, this is from this to this is 3/4, right? 3/4. Let me see if I can find, okay, no, this is not what I want. No, okay. I thought I had a detail of the tenons and these sockets. This is as good as I have it. All right. So notice that these have the same width on either side. So if you're going to divide it into 3/4, right? So 1/4 1/4, 1/4. Okay. And then 1/4 all around here, right? Each one of these is 1/4. So I believe that you wind up with a cubit. And incidentally, at the corners of the tabernacle, so go here, I'm going to skip a little bit. And believe me, I've tried to puzzle this out. This is so beautiful, the way they locked. But the difficulty has to do with when you get to the corner of the tabernacle. See what I keep going here, see if I can find a good picture for you. Right, I'm talking about these areas here, right? So you want this to be 10 cubits right here, right? So the edge, we're going to actually talk about this in the text itself, but how this connected here becomes a challenge. And that's why you have 10 cubits here, and this is an additional cubit on this side. So you've got a board because the width of the board, right, is 1.5 cubits, this is still 1.5 cubits. They're all made 1.5 cubits. And if this is 1.5 cubits, and this is going to be 10, this distance between the inside here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cubits, that's 9 cubits. Right? So on either end, you have 0.5 cubit, and you still have a board length of a cubit to go, because each board is 1.5 cubits. This for me was a tremendous puzzle, trying to figure out how this actually worked. But that's how they dealt with this particular engineering conundrum in this particular place. And the Torah actually describes the difference of these outer pieces in the corners here.
Isn't 10 by 1.5 cubits really, really huge and heavy for a piece of wood or gold or whatever?
It's 15. Okay, so the boards are made out of acacia wood. They were very, very heavy, and they had carts to transport the boards when they disassembled the tabernacle. So we're looking at the wood itself. The wood itself.
Did they have wheels?
Yes, they did. They did have wheels. They had wheels. At least according to the story, they would have. And according to the Talmud that describes these carts. And by the way, the Torah itself talks about the Levites having these carts. Tell me, how effective would a chariot be without wheels? Sliding over the desert floor, perhaps? I don't know. But they had wheels. The wheel was already invented. Just trying to think of anything else in this regard. All right, I think we can get back into the text. Oh, Lauren, the gold was thin plates. We know that gold is terribly heavy, but I think the gold itself would be very thin plates, at least as the stuff that was beaten onto layered onto on the boards itself. These pieces probably would have been quite heavy. These locking pieces. Let's go back into the text. We are almost out of time. It's unbelievable. Okay, all right. So that's how you figure out the breadth of the board, even though the Torah does not explicitly tell you what that breadth was. And I think it's interesting. And I absolutely feel that part of that's intentional. It's not an omission. Or if it is an omission, it's an intentional omission, because this is all about trying to get our brains to work. And because there's a part of us that enjoys puzzles, that's something very pleasurable about trying to solve puzzles. So we discussed this. Now we go to this. Shtei yadot lakerish ha'echad. There were two, this literally says hands to each board, and we're talking about the tenons now. That's what we're talking about. Those two tenons that were on the bottom of each board. Meshulavot achat el achat, perfectly parallel to each other. Cain asa l'chol, sorry, this should be Cain. Cain asa l'chol karshe hamishkan. So he did for every single one of the boards of the Mishkan. Vayas et hakrashim lamishkan, and he made the boards for the Mishkan, esrim krashim, 20 boards, lifat neged taimana, on the southern side. So there would be 20 boards of 1.5. So we know that it was 30, right? That the total would have been 30. So the Holy of Holies was 10 by 10, and the holy section would have been 20 by 10. Va'arba adnei chesef, and 40 silver sockets. Asa tachat esrim hakrashim. He made underneath the 20 boards.
Arba'im, by the way, you said arba.
Did I? I thought I said arba'im. Okay, sorry. Arba'im, 40 sockets of silver he made underneath the 20 boards. Shnei adanim, 2 sockets, tachat hakeresh ha'echad, under each board, lishtei yedotav, for its 2 tenons. Ushnei adanim tachat hakeresh ha'echad. He said, so he's just simply talking about a series here, and 2 sockets underneath the one board, lishtei yedotav, for its 2 tenons, for its tenons. Okay, here we go. Uletzela hamishkan hashenit, and for the side, the second side of the Mishkan, lifat safon, in the north direction, asa esrim kashim. He also made 20 boards. By the way, this is lovely. The word for side in the construction of the Mishkan is tsela. The word for side that is commonly used in Hebrew is tzad, and he doesn't use the word tzad. He uses the word tsela. It turns out, going all the way back to Genesis, when it talks about Adam and Eve and how God created Eve from Adam's rib, because indeed the word tsela in Hebrew means a rib, okay? But because in the context of the tabernacle, it doesn't mean a rib, it means a side, there is an interpretation of that surgery that God performed on Adam as removing a side from Adam to make Eve, and not as a rib. And that the original human being was actually hermaphrodite. That both Adam and Eve were created together when God created Adam. And what God did was he sliced down Adam in the middle. And because originally they had 2 faces that weren't looking at each other. And God had to slice down the middle of Adam in order to have them be able to look at each other. There's a lot of symbolism involved in that, I think. And I've always absolutely loved this particular interpretation, because I know that the Adam's rib interpretation has been used to somehow put women in a subordinate place. And in my humble opinion, this particular interpretation does not do that, at least not nearly to the same extent, and maybe not at all. And says something about, in order to be able to look at each other, we need to be able to see our distinctions as well. We can't just hold on to ourselves if we want to see the other. There's a lot to be played with in terms of that. But just all, and by the way, of course, you know that I totally appreciate the Malbim's explanation of the tabernacle as actually being the human form. And so these boards, which are very solid, right, represent the frame of the human being. And that's why they talk about this word sela, rib, for the side. Okay, so on to the next verse. Va'arba'im adnehem chasef, and 40 of their sockets of silver. Shnei adanim tachat hakeresh ha'echad, 2 sockets underneath one board. Shnei adanim tachat hakeresh ha'echad. Again, it's just the way Hebrew style describes a series, right? Mishkan yama, and for the edge of the edge of the Mishkan on the west side, asa shisha krashim, he made 6 boards. Remember, I was telling you a little bit about this, right? This is the side of the Mishkan. So he made 6 boards. 6 times 1.5 means you've now got 9 cubits. Ushnei krashim asa, and he made 2 more boards. It just says, and he made 2 boards, lemekutz ot hamishkan, for the corners of the Mishkan, vaYak'hel, on that edge there. Okay. Vahayu to'amim milmata, and they were to'amim. Hard word, so tomim could mean like twins, and I have a feeling he's talking about the fact that they had, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking he's talking about the fact that they also had those tenons on the bottom, v'yachdav yu tamim rosho, but together they would be, tamim means perfect. In other words, they were locked right against each other, against the other boards at its top. So remember, those corner boards were attached to the ones in the middle of that edge, the 6 boards, but it also was attached to the side, on the south side for one of those boards, and the north side for the other one of those boards. El tabaat ha'echad, with one ring. Kain asa lishnehem, thus he did for the 2 of them, lishnei hamikzoot, for the 2 corners. So I'm going to stop here. 1 second. Okay. And we will, God willing, pick this up next year. I got that. There we are. I'm going to stop the share. And if anybody wants to make any comments, this is the time to do it before I stop. So, as I said before, when I used to read this without the book, I had no idea what was going on. And this book just exploded this whole thing into a reality that was quite amazing. And the level of engineering involved here, I thought, was pretty cool in terms of the fact that this had to be set up and taken down and moved to another location. I mean, prefabrication, right? That's exactly what we're talking about, prefabrication. All right, I'll stop the recording at this point, and God willing, we'll pick it up on Sunday.